Hello aspirants, welcome back to Anthropology PYQ series. So friends, a very good morning to all of you, and I welcome you all to this session on behalf of SRIRAM's IAS. So friends, as a part of our discussion, we were just trying to discuss about the previous year questions related to anthropology. So let's try to explore more about one of the important question in today's discussion, right? So today, let's try to take up the question from section B of the 2025 anthropology paper. Okay, so where we can just understand and we can just answer it in a systematic fashion. First, the question of the day with us is this: Genome-Wide Disease Association Studies advanced our understanding of health and disease. Discuss. So this is the question for us. So the question is all about the Genome-Wide Disease Association Studies and their role in understanding and role in enhancing the health and disease concept. So that's the basic question that is there with us. So did anyone attempt, those who have joined in online, did anyone attempt this question? So good. Let's see how you can approach and what is the basic concept of this particular answer. So first, if you happen to see the approach, so what you can just mention in the introduction and what you can mention in the body and conclusion. So in the very introduction, what you can do, so you can simply mention what are the Genome-Wide Disease Association Studies and what are the basic things like some common examples of it, like that you can just mention. So there, further you can highlight that Genome-Wide Disease Association Studies is a cornerstone of modern genetic research. So like that, simply you can just use such kind of words and you can just proceed and you can enter into the answer. Then after that, you can jump to the body portion of the answer where you can just mention the chief demand of the question. What's the chief demand of the question? It's nothing but simply you have to just bring in the relevance of some of the popular Genome-Wide Disease Association studies. And then you have to highlight the role in enhancing our understanding of health and disease. So how GWAS, Genome-Wide Disease Association Studies, helped in understanding the disease and health concept. So that's one thing. Then in the conclusion, you can simply reiterate the significance, and you can also further, you can explain the relevance of these studies in understanding and enriching this particular thing. So that's how you can conclude the answer, right? I hope the approach is clear to you all. So now let us try to explore and let's try to understand what are these Genome-Wide Disease Association studies and how do they help in understanding disease and health. So that would be our major quest of the day. So first, let's try to understand what are these studies is all about. In very simple fashion to say, what is a genome? So this is where you have to understand in basic concept point of view. So what is a genome? A genome is basically, it is nothing but it's the complete set of the genetic composition of an individual. In very simple fashion to say, if we take up a living organism, so genes make up the genetic composition. So the total set of the genes that are present in a living organism, that makes up a genome of an organism. Now, if we can analyze the genome of the population, genome of the entire population, so then we can simply identify certain gene variations or certain variations in the genes, so which may further increase the risk of occurrence of certain particular diseases. So the Genome-Wide Disease Association studies, they will try to just explain or they will try to give a way forward for us for occurrence of such kind of diseases. So this is where they will help very much. So first, let's try to see the definition from the slide point of view. So you can see here, look here. Genome-Wide Disease Association studies are the large studies that will scan the whole genome of an organism and population to find genetic variations that increase the chances of incidence of a disease. So these are Genome-Wide Disease Association studies. That means in very simple fashion to say, what do they do? What are these studies are all about concerned means, they will systematically analyze the common genetic variations across the genome in large populations. So we will take up large populations and there we will select two populations. One set with a population with a disease and one another set of population with a disease without a disease. So then what we do, we will try to systematically analyze some of the common genetic variants among these two sets of the populations. There, we will come to know that certain genetic variations are responsible for occurrence of certain diseases, certain complex and common diseases. So in the set of population without disease, so they will serve as the reference points. So the people with disease genome, so they will serve as the sample population. So like that what we do, we will systematically analyze such kind of gene variants which are responsible for occurrence of certain complex and common diseases. So these are nothing but genome-wide disease association studies. So usually what we do, simply we will try to just pick up an individual and we will try to just explore about the diseases. But here what we do, we will take up the entire population, and in the entire population we will try to study systematically about the genetic composition of entire population. So that's the basic objective of this genome-wide disease association studies. Now further, if you happen to see the significance and relevance of these genome-wide disease association studies, so they are basically, we can call them as a cornerstone of the modern genetic research, because these studies have done lot of contributions with respect to the genetics of the modern genetics, and further they have reshaped the modern biomedical science and further helped us to enhance and enrich our knowledge from the perspective of the health and disease. So that's the core importance of these particular studies. Can you able to catch that? So that's basically the genome-wide disease association studies. So try to just decode this word so that you can understand things in a simple fashion. So these are nothing but certain studies that will analyze the genome of a particular population to identify the diseases that are associated with that particular genome. Is that clear now? I hope it is clear for you. Now let's see some of the common or some of the popular genome-wide disease association studies that we can have or that we had worldwide. So one such example for genome-wide disease association studies is with respect to type 2 diabetes. So there was a genome-wide disease association studies that have been conducted in the European populations. In the European populations, when they were conducting some studies, they tried to systematically understand the occurrence of the type 2 diabetes, that is disease, and with the help of the gene called as FTO gene. So fat and the obesity associated gene. So it is called as fat and mass obesity associated gene. So FTO gene. So this gene was responsible for occurrence of most prevalence of the type 2 diabetes in the European populations. So what do they did and how they have find out some information. Let's try to explore. Now look here. So a large studies in the European cohorts means groups. So it has identified that certain variants in the FTO gene strongly associated with obesity and increased type 2 diabetes. So that was the observation. So type 2 diabetes and obesity, they were more prevalent in certain European groups. So why that was more prevalent in those groups? Because there were some slight genetic variations in the FTO gene. So the gene that is responsible for the fat mass and the obesity. Now, what does this give for us? Like how this studies helped us means, this finding clarified that the genetic basis of metabolic disorders and highlighted the pathways that influence the energy balance. So studies with respect to gene variations in FTO gene and further occurrence of the type 2 diabetes as well as the obesity, that further clarified the genetic basis of metabolic disorders. So how metabolic disorders are occurring in humans. So with the help of this, we could able to systematically tackle some of the diseases, common and complex diseases like obesity is a very common problem in all of the places of the world. And type 2 diabetes, so diabetes, so this is another important common metabolic disorder. So that is further is linked with this variations in FTO genes. So this is how the genome-wide disease association studies helped us to understand the health and disease concept further, right? So that's one thing. Then further, if you see another example, so we have other gene called as HMGA2 gene. So this HMGA2 gene is has been systematically studied. So genome of the global multi-ethnic sample. So samples from multiple communities have been collected, and these samples have been systematically analyzed for the variations with respect to HMGA2 gene. So this HMGA2 gene is a kind of oncofetal gene. Oncofetal gene means the gene which can cause the cancers in the fetal stage of the human beings. So cancers, so which can cause the cancers, or which can cause some sort of changes in the body. So like that. So now, so these studies with respect to the multiple communities of the genes all over the world. So what it has been done means it has significantly showed, or it started showing influence on the human height. And this particular study has showed us how complex traits shaped by multiple small effect gene variants acting across the populations. So how small changes in the certain genes will help in influencing various factors in the human being. So this is one another important study that we have. So this is one another example for genome-wide disease association studies. And then let's see some other popular studies. So we have a study that has been conducted in African ancestry populations with African ancestry. So where we try to systematically study the African Americans. So amongst them, we systematically could able to find out the sickle cell disease modifier kind of gene. So BCL11A. So this is a kind of the sickle cell disease modifier gene. So this particular gene variant was prevalent in the African and American populations. So what it used to do, it used to regulate the fetal hemoglobin levels. So once they find out that amongst all such kind of communities, these variations are present, so this further helped us to find out that higher fetal hemoglobin reduces the disease severity, leading to new therapeutic targets. So this is how we could able to systematically catch how the hemoglobin levels could be varied. So that is one another study, right? So remember BCL11A gene. So this is a variant that is responsible for occurrence of the sickle cell disease among that particular population. Then in the same fashion, if you happen to see some in some of the African American cohorts, African American groups, so there was a small genetic variations, mutations with respect to the PCSK9 gene. So PCSK9 gene. So there is a gene that is responsible for the fat metabolism. So fat metabolism, which increases or which is concerned with regulating the low density lipoprotein levels, so LDL levels. So studies have proved and studies have identified that natural loss of the function in the PCSK gene has led to develop a typical feature in them. So what was the typical feature? So it was that they were having very low LDL cholesterol levels. So due to loss of the function in this PCSK gene, PCSK9 gene, so they were having low LDL levels. So low LDL levels means there were no heart attacks or no heart issues or heart diseases. So this further helped our medicine community to further discover a new class of the new world class of the drugs. So those drugs are known as PCSK inhibitors. So we have systematically developed that PCSK9 inhibitor drugs. So these drugs helped us to handle and tackle some of the issues related to the coronary diseases, so heart diseases. So this is how genome-wide disease association studies helped us to change our perspective with respect to the health and disease, right? So in the similar fashion, let's try to see some other examples. So you should know these studies and you should know these examples so that at least you can use one or two in the examination. So here I am presenting you the entire concept so that you can learn it in a systematic fashion, right? So now let's see. Other important genome-wide disease association studies have been conducted in the European and East Asian populations. Among the European and East Asian populations, we had found variations with respect to APOE4 gene. So APOE4 genes. So this gene is associated or linked with occurrence or prevalence of the Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease is a kind of neurodegenerative disease. So which slowly, progressively, it tries to just degenerate the brain or neural tissues. So one thing that you can also remember that with the increase in age, the occurrence of the Alzheimer's disease and this possibility of this would be more. So where we'll try to forget some things like that. So that's Alzheimer's disease. So the studies have identified that this gene allele was a major genetic risk factor for the late onset of the Alzheimer's disease. So when we have found out that this particular gene allele is causing that particular disease, so it further helped us or it further strengthened our understanding of the neurodegenerative risks and supported the biomarker based prediction. So we could able to systematically predict. So in this particular set of population, we can expect the occurrence of Alzheimer's disease. So like that. So this is how genome-wide disease association studies, they helped us to understand the health and disease. And then we have other example. So where there was a wide studies, they have been conducted in European and North American populations. So amongst the North American and European populations, there was a variations with respect to a gene called as NOD2 gene. So NOD2 gene. So this NOD2 gene was responsible for occurrence of a particular disease known as Crohn's disease. It's a kind of liver-associated disease. So where these studies in individuals revealed the risk variance in NOD2 gene. So identification of this was a key immune response, and the discovery helped us to explain the genetic susceptibility to Crohn's disease. So that's where one important thing that has happened for us, right? So this is one important study that you have to remember. So one thing you can remember, so Crohn's disease and NOD2 gene, so this is one thing which helped us to explain the genetic susceptibility to Crohn's disease. So then Alzheimer's disease, APOE4 genes, and major occurrence of the late onset of Alzheimer's disease. So some of the examples you must and should remember, right? So these were some of the popular genome-wide disease association studies. So try to catch them. So type 2 diabetes mellitus, FTO gene. So fat, mass, and the obesity associated gene. And height variation, HMA2 gene. So that was responsible for the influence of the human height. So then like BCL11A gene, so that was responsible for occurrence of the sickle cell anemia in the African and American populations, and LDL cholesterol levels, so PCSK9 gene. So remember, this is a very, very, very interesting fact that amongst these people, like some of the African American population, so they hardly doesn't get the heart diseases, coronary diseases. Just how beautiful this is, because they have this gene variation in the PCSK9 gene. So genes are subjected to changes. So these changes, basically, they could be permanent changes or they could be a short-term changes. Short-term, sudden short-term and random changes are known as mutations. And slow, gradual, and long-term changes that occurs in the genetic level are known as, basically, we will call it as adaptations. So now they're all that thing but some of the adaptations that have occurred in that particular set of population. So when we systematically study such kind of variations or changes with respect to the genetic composition, that helps us to understand the health and disease concepts in a systematic fashion. Now, we have understood basically what are the popular genetic genome-wide disease association studies. Now, let's try to explore and understand the chief demand of the question. So, how did the genome-wide disease association studies, it advanced our understanding of health and disease. So, this is our chief demand of the question. Now, first thing, so we have understood the concept. So, there, now you can see, these studies will help in identification of novel disease-associated loci. What do you mean by loci? Means locus. Locus means the point where the genes are present on the chromosomes. There would be a particular point on which the genes will be present on the chromosomes. So that place is known as locus. So we can find out such kind of the loci of the genes which are associated with a particular disease. So that's where we have saw some of the examples. So what we can understand, these studies successfully identified thousands of new genetic locations which are associated with a typical or vast spectrum of the complex diseases. So with this, so we could able to systematically find out so many associations that were entirely unexpected and previously unknown for us. So these studies helped us to understand that. So that's how they played a role in understanding health and disease. Then second instance, let's see how they'll be helpful. So for example, if you see examples, so certain autoimmune disorders like let's say Crohn's disease or type 1 diabetes, so we could able to see identify certain gene variants that are responsible for this. So there was genes that are responsible for them like interleukin-23 receptors. So we'll call it as like IL-23R. So there was such kind of immune response genes that were responsible for such kind of diseases. So this is one instance. Then further, how it will be helpful for understanding health and disease. Now you look here. They help us to elucidate the polygenic nature of the common diseases. So certain common diseases have polygenic inheritance nature. What do you mean by polygenic inheritance nature? So polygenic inheritance nature. So certain diseases like let's say for example heart diseases or type 2 diabetes or schizophrenia, so they are typically polygenic in nature. What is this polygenic in nature? Means those diseases which are influenced by large number of genetic variants. So which are not under the control of single genes, which are under the control of multiple genes. So such kind of diseases are known as polygenic diseases, right? So that's thing. So how did they help us means significance. So these kind of studies have fundamentally changed the scientific perspective from searching one or few smoking gun genes to understanding the intricate web of genetic susceptibility. So earlier we used to search only for one gene or one causative factor. Now with these genome studies, as they have showed that certain diseases are polygenic in nature, we could able to systematically understand and we could able to systematically search for the intricate web of the genetic susceptibility. That means what are all the factors that are responsible for occurrence of this particular disease. So that's how it enhanced our understanding of the diseases and health. So that's one thing. Now further, how do they help us? They help us in advancing personalized medicines. We can develop personalized medicines with the help of these studies. So how? Let's see. So let's say for example, these studies are the foundation for the development of polygenic risk scores. What are these polygenic risk scores? So usually these polygenic risk scores, they will aggregate small effects of thousands or millions of the variants. So small genetic variations, they will aggregate thousands and millions of the variants of these genes to provide individual risk estimate for a common disease. So polygenic risk scores will help us to estimate the incidence or the prevalence of occurrence of a common disease in the medicine. So genome-wide disease association studies helped us to understand the development of this polygenic risk scores. So this particular aspect further can be used to stratify the populations into high-risk groups and low-risk groups. So for the diseases like coronary artery disease or breast cancers, like that. So we can systematically analyze the groups and we can say that this group is high-risk group, this group is low-risk group. So for that, the systematic understanding of this polygenic risk scores is important. So this has been further done through this genome-wide disease association studies. So that's how, so this particular concept also we could able to identify and understand health and disease. Further, if you see, so it also helped us to enhance the drug development and pharmacogenomics. Pharmacogenomics, it's a new term. So development of the pharmaceutical drugs as per or in accordance with the genomic studies. So that's pharmacogenomics. So according to that. So now you look here how these studies will help. So studies will help in identifying certain specific genes and certain specific pathways which are basically associated with certain common diseases. So once we can identify specific genes responsible for that disease, specific pathways associated with that particular disease, so we can simply produce new drugs. How? So we can just target that particular gene, or we can just simply decode that particular path. So by changing that pathway or by silencing that particular gene, so we can just use that technique in the controlling of the diseases. So this is how, so this will help. This helped us in understanding the health and disease. So look at the example. So like the common example that we have already understood, that was with respect to PCSK9 gene. So PCSK9 gene was associated with low LDL cholesterol levels in African and American population. So in the African American populations. So actually what was happening, this section of the people, they were never getting any kind of heart diseases. So this is where the pharmaceutical world, so they explored more into how we can just bring in or silence or we can trigger this PCSK9 gene and we can use it in our health and medicine. So this led to development of a new class of highly effective cholesterol lowering drugs known as PCSK9 inhibitors. So these inhibitors helped us to tackle the heart diseases. So that's how they helped in understanding the health and disease. So that's one another instance. Then further, so these were all the points that you can mention in the body portion of the answer. Finally, simply you can conclude the answer by stating with some relevance and significance of these studies. So you can simply say like this: these studies have revolutionized the landscape of health and disease research. How? By uncovering the complex polygenic basis of common diseases, by identifying novel biological pathways and strengthening the drug discovery, and by laying foundations for precision medicine. So all these things have came to a reality with the help of genome-wide disease association studies. So again to say, genome-wide disease association studies are nothing but studies which are concerned with systematic analysis of genome of a population so that we can find out the associated diseases to that set of populations in a systematic fashion. So that's the major objective of these particular studies. And with these kind of impacts, these advances made these studies indispensable for the future of the personalized healthcare, and it became a cornerstone in the contemporary human genetics. So this is how you can conclude the answer. Is that it clear for you all? So those who have joined online, so you can just mention whether it is clear or not, right? And those who will be watching on the recorded version of the video, so you can just put forward your doubts in the comment section. So I'll be just addressing those doubts in the comments in the later later half of the time. So that's how. So this is all with respect to the Genome-Wide Disease Association Studies question. So friends, that's all for the day. So the question for the next session that we'll be going to take is this. So look at the question. So question 8C. So it is, examine the utility of human remains in forensic analysis and discuss the facial reconstruction technique in detail. So this is the question. So that is with us. So tomorrow let's take up this question and let's discuss this question. So now you pass it and you just note down the question and you can write the answer and you can just drop the answer in the Telegram channel, so which I'll be providing the link now. So just pass it and take down the question, then we will just see. Right? So now, after writing the answer, you can submit me the answer through the Telegram channel. So you can just pick and join our Telegram channel, the Anthropology Guide. So you can just find out this link, you can join through this link or through the QR code. So this is where you can just submit the answers. So that's all for the day from my side. So friends, we'll meet tomorrow with another important discussion. So that's where we'll stop the discussion for the day. So thank you all of you for joining me with this session. So if you like our series, so please share the link and subscribe to our channel. So thank you all. We'll meet tomorrow at the same time, 11:30 a.m. sharp. So thank you all.